Folks, what's going on? I am very excited to share this week's video with you. I was planning to shoot it uh, when I got home, but I'm actually just in the right mindset right now, and I just want to get it out there because it's inside of me. First of all, what a crazy week it's been. If anyone who's following the trial, it's a very emotional journey. I'm not going to get into it here, but I'll just leave it at that, of just what a crazy week. On top of that, I've had a couple very powerful conversations with a couple of people, and I've also just started a new book which is called The Wim Hof Method. I've just started it, so I can't say for sure, but I do, based on what I've read already, I highly recommend it. It's really hitting home for me, and it was kind of the nail in the coffin for the topic that I want to talk about this week. Week number 2 of the performance coaching update or program, the lesson I want to share is trusting your intuition. And I know we hear this all the time. There's so many of these concepts that we hear all the time, which is good because it comes down to repetition being the mother of all skill. The more we hear these things, the more likely we are to actually implement them into our lives. And I say this all the time. It's one thing, everyone says, I already know about that, but there's a big difference between knowing something and doing something. And not just doing it, but learning ways of how we can implement these ideas into our life on an ongoing basis. And how I want to share this lesson of trusting our intuition is from a realization that I had a couple days ago when I was sitting in front of the computer sending about 100 emails, as I typically do in my life during the week. I have very email focused businesses, and that's just kind of part of the gig, which I have now hired some people to take that off of my plate because it's not an area that I am strong in. And here's the idea that I want to share with you. I was reading some emails, and I talk about having, ADD and ADHD and OCD and all of these things. And sometimes it gets to a point where I'm reading anything that I'm reading, I have to read it multiple times. And especially with emails, I find this. As my day goes on, if I'm getting a little bit tired, I have a really hard time paying attention. Or either that, or I get hyper focused in that I continue to read the same email over and over. And sometimes it's to the point where if I get a large email and it's essentially one large paragraph, it becomes very daunting, and it really does become very difficult for me to read, to get through it. So I was thinking to myself for a couple of seconds, I was beating myself up because I was having a hard time getting through this email. And all of a sudden this idea popped in my head, and I've talked about this before, but the idea was that, hold on a second here, Joe. You are not broken. The fact that something inside of you is telling you that you shouldn't be sitting in front of this computer reading this email, you need to listen to that. When I am out doing things, when I'm talking with people, when I'm coaching, when I'm in my element, I am full of life. I love movement. I love being outside. My most creative times are if I'm going for a walk or post exercise. That I love the way that I am as a human being. And the reality is, maybe I'm not supposed to be sitting in front of a computer and reading these emails all day long. Maybe the thing that's inside of me that's the reason why I'm struggling, these things that I have, which these labels that I hate to use, like ADD and ADHD, maybe I don't have any of these things. Maybe the reality is the world that I've created, that I've put myself into, is not the correct world that I'm supposed to be living in. Maybe I'm extremely normal. Maybe I have all of these gifts of having a lot of energy and wanting to be in the world, but I'm living in a world that is not allowing me to do that. Maybe we're not supposed to be stuck in front of a computer for for 8 hours a day responding to emails. Maybe I'm perfectly healthy, and that is where the problem is. And I can do it for a little bit, but then I get to a point where my intuition starts to tell me, Joe, we shouldn't be doing this anymore. This isn't right for you. So rather than looking at the situation like I'm this broken person and I have these labels, I don't agree with any of that. I think that I'm just not living in the element that I'm supposed to be living in. And where the real problem comes in, and I've had a couple of conversations this week, is, I was recommended to take Ritalin when I was quite young. I have been a couple times in the course of my life. I've never taken it. I'm not here to tell anyone whether they should or should not take medication. That's not my role. And it does have benefits. I can only speak from my personal experience. And my personal experience is that I don't think that I'm broken and I need something to calm me down and to help me focus to read emails. What I need is to listen to my body and live a life that my body wants to live. And I think when we become depressed and anxious and we start attaching these labels to ourselves, these are times that we need to stop trying to force ourselves into a life that we do not live and make it livable. And we need to be listening to these feelings and these emotions. This is our body and our higher self and our supreme being that doesn't have a voice, and it's trying to tell us through emotion and feeling that something is wrong. If we're feeling depressed, if we're feeling anxious, we should listen to these feelings and saying, what is going on in our world that we need to change to create the feelings that we want in our life, instead of smothering that feeling and trying to make it disappear, because it will always be there. And unless we want to get on this medication for the rest of our lives, then we need to deal with it and we need to adapt. And this has just been extremely powerful. And the reason, I was literally just listening to the Wim Hof Method book, and this whole book is based from, I'm only a couple chapters in, but the whole book is based on the idea of connecting with nature and how we have changed who we are as primal beings, and we're trying to force ourselves into these climate controlled, technology focused worlds, when really we are primates. We need to be connecting with nature. We need to be moving. We need to be outside. And this is just such a very powerful realization that I think many of us have. So for week 2, for this video, what I hope that you get out of it is to, first of all, most importantly, connect with your intuition. When something is telling you something or trying to tell you something, trust yourself. Have that confidence in yourself. No one knows you better than your higher self and your intuition. We need to be listening very closely to what these messages are. And second from that, after the awareness, is to start creating a life that is accommodating these feelings and helping us to course correct and live a life that is going to make us happy. And by listening to our intuition, listening to our feelings, what are the things that are making us angry or agitated or anxious, and how can we create a life that helps us to thrive? If you are someone like myself who needs to be out, needs to be moving, sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day is not the right job for us. If you don't like being in front of people and you're much more comfortable in your own space, then maybe something like that is. So this is a very important lesson for all of us, including myself, that I've really been focusing on. And I think it's a really interesting idea and concept to share for this week's video. And I hope you find it of interest. I'd be curious to hear how these feelings and emotions show up for you in your life that may have told you or are telling you that you might need to be making some shifts in your life, because what's happening for you could be happening for other people, and it could help with their experience as well. That's all I got. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Peace.